Hi folks, this is Richard Hall here from Stonehenge Aotearoa.
And Haritina Mogoshanu from New Zealand Astrobiology Network.
And sitting over there is Haritina. All right. Do we get a picture of Haritina as well?
Hello, and this is Michael. And yes, you will eventually. Don't worry about it. It's a radio program.
Well, she's a lot better looking than me, you see. But anyway, we're doing this as a radio program today because a few technical hitches, mostly by myself. But anyway, what we're primarily talking about was going to be the planets type, because it's just all the big bright planets that can be seen with the unaided eye are actually in the sky at the moment. And you'll notice this if you go out in the evening and you look up and you'll see a big bright star, and it's right up on a clear dark night right near the Milky Way. All right. Well, that's not a star at all. That's actually the planet Jupiter. All right. And just a little while behind that is another bright star. I say bright, it doesn't stand out because there's lots of bright stars in this region, and that is the planet Saturn. So the two biggest planets in the solar system are there, and often when we talk about planets, later on, if you stay up late enough, well, after midnight, you'll see a big brilliant red star rising up, right? Well, that's the planet Mars, and indeed Mars is only comes close to us every 2 years, and so with this year it's going to make a close approach in October. All right, so this is the opportunity to observe this planet. And also, if you're getting up early enough in the morning, you can see Mars. The early morning, you'll also see the planet Venus there. So just about all the bright planets are visible in our night sky at the moment. But I'm often using the word planets, but what is a planet and what is a star? Well, the interesting thing is that when you look up at night and you look out across the sky, you see all those stars out there. They're actually suns. And Haritina, butt in any time you like. They're actually suns. And this is what we don't tend to realise, that planets appear bright in our sky because they are our local planets. Yes, Harry?
The word planet comes from Greek planethos, which means wandering star, because the ancient Greek didn't know what a planet was. They only knew about stars, so they thought these were just stars that were wandering alongside the same place in the sky where we see the sun and the moon, which we call the ecliptic.
But of course, it's not until sort of telescopes evolved that we actually began to realise what they were, and they appear bright simply because they're close to us. So it's very difficult when we look out into space. We've got no means of gaining any form of perspective, how far something is away, how big it is. All right. So, for example, we have a curious fact that the sun and the moon from here on Earth virtually appear exactly the same size. And that's why you can get a total eclipse of the sun, because the moon will move in front of it and boom.
And you can do a really cute trick that we're teaching people to do. If you ever want to make the moon disappear, all you have to do is stretch your arm and put your pinky on top of the moon. Your pinky at arm's length will be 1 degree, and the moon is half of a degree in the sky. So that's an easy trick to do.
Yeah.
If you ever want to make the moon disappear, we tend to avoid the moon when we do stargazing because it makes too much light in the sky. So it is better to see all these amazing objects that Richard is talking about in a moonless night.
That's right. And okay, so if you look at the moon, and okay, the sun appears roughly the same size. It's a lot brighter, obviously. But in fact, as you'll be aware, that the Earth is a lot larger than our moon. All right, it's about the moon's about a quarter of the diameter the Earth is. But if you look at our sun, well, if you could pack 1 1/3 million Earths inside the globe of the sun. Now, this is immediately telling you the sun is a long way away, which it is. In fact, it takes light. When you look at the sun, the light that's actually coming or the heat that's coming started on its journey towards you 8 minutes ago. All right. So the sun is about 150 million kilometres away, and unlike a planet, it shines by its own light, and it is the light of the sun that illuminates the planets. And unfortunately, so although planets are very important to us, they appear to be made mostly from the debris left over from the formation of our star, which we call the sun. In the ancient world, long ago, people used to believe they didn't understand what powered the sun. The enormous amount of energy coming out of our sun. How was it? We're going back into the 19th century when people were looking back there. They thought the only thing they could think of was gravity. So in other words, under its huge mass, the sun was gradually contracting and therefore giving off heat, right? And under this theory, of course, what it meant was the sun is actually gradually fading. In other words, it was actually believed to be a lot brighter in the past than it is today. And from that arose the theory that if you look at the planets, their evolution also varied from the distance from the sun. So Mars, being further away from the sun, right, it would have evolved into like an Earth state a lot earlier. Venus, which is closer to the sun, of course, is later. And indeed, if we actually have a look at Venus through one of our telescopes, you'll discover that you can see very little because the entire surface of the planet is shrouded in cloud. In the whole ancient world, people used to believe this was all steam. And indeed, I can remember the idea being put out that if we could actually see through and land on Venus, we would find a forest, a jungle, like the Earth was millions of years ago, and possibly even dinosaurs wandering around.
Or Venusians.
Of Venusians. So see, this is a good point on how things actually grow in size. Notice the observational factors, when we look at Venus, we can't see its surface. The conclusion is there's dinosaurs walking on there, right? But anyway, that was the theory that arose. But what happened with, and also looking at Mars, it was believed that Mars at the other end of the scale was advanced much more rapidly than the Earth. Now, what does this tell you? It means that Martians must be more advanced. Therefore, surely there will be Martians out there, but not only that, intelligent Martians.
Well, actually, in 1924, the U.S. Navy made an announcement that they would like to hire as many astronomers as possible because they thought that these astronomers will be able to get in contact with Mars and listen to any signals that the Martians would have sent trying to get in contact with Earth. And for me, that was a very impressive thing when I read it, because it just shows how much we're willing to believe there is alien life out there.
That's right. And the thing is that looking out there, when you look through a telescope, even a relatively small telescope, the interesting thing about Mars is that we see seasonal changes on Mars. Just as it goes around the sun, just same as the Earth does have its winter and summer, so does Mars. And what you see is it's got light and dark patches. It's got yellowy orange areas, which were believed to be deserts. And then there were dark areas which grew in size over the seasons and then shrank again. And when they grew, what would happen is it's got two polar caps. These would shrink as well. And the more you thought about it, the only thing that you could drop into your mind was, this must be vegetation, what we're observing. In other words, as we move into a Martian summer and the polar caps melt, it drops water and all the plants grow, right?
Well, we wish.
Well, the other thing we saw, and actually this is very real, and you can actually see it today, when you're observing Mars, suddenly you see a flash of light from its surface. And a little while later, another one. Hey, what was this? This must be aliens out there, all right? So that was, I guess that was the Mars that I grew up with, not with Haritina. She's a little bit younger than me.
But Mars is an ever interesting world, and it's been some very exciting things that happened in the last week. NASA managed to launch flawlessly, I might add, the Rover Perseverance that has a helicopter on board, the very first helicopter that is going to go on Mars, and it's on its way to Mars. It was fantastic. We actually stayed up until 1 o'clock to watch the launch and see how everybody was getting very excited. And I'm an astrobiologist, so my job is to look for life everywhere else beyond Earth, and so for me it's a very important and significant launch because the Perseverance rover now is going to look for signs of life on Mars. That's what it's going to do. It's going to take samples and is going to leave them there on the planet. Hopefully that in the next few years there will be a spacecraft that will pick those samples up from Mars and bring them here on Earth. Because, and this is always the debate between sending humans to space or sending robots to space. There's like a lot of people who want to and argue to send robots because, you know, on Mars you can't breathe. A robot doesn't need to breathe. A rover doesn't need to breathe. And but humans are very good at recognizing patterns, and so when we go somewhere, it takes us very little time to recognize what the rocks are or the formations or what we are seeing, and that's yet an advantage that we still have over any other machine or artificial intelligence so far. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But
see, this is all important because although the Martians in actual fact don't exist, well, the intelligent Martians, of all the planets in the solar system, Mars is still the world that resembles the Earth more than any other. And it was later discovered those dark areas which were growing and changing were simply due to seasonal changes due to enormous wind changes on Mars. And it was driving sand over areas and blowing it away and so on. And the flashing lights that they were seeing, I'm afraid, was not these spacecraft of aliens. It turns out they were patches of ice. Just the same way as, you know, you'll see a flash of light on the Earth when there's a piece of ice out there, suddenly it catches the sun for a short period of time. So that's what we were looking at.
So talking about the weather on Mars is really interesting, how actually on a sunny summer day at the equator, the best temperature on Mars is around 20 degrees Celsius. I always liken Mars to Wellington. It's like you would go to Wellington, except that the winds on Mars, and whoever saw The Martian, you saw that there is this plot in the beginning that one person gets left on Mars because there was a big storm, where that's actually probably the only thing on that movie that is not true, because storms on Mars, they never get that powerful. So everything in there is more like a breeze, like a nice tiny breeze, which is not happening in Wellington.
How do you just said 20 degrees Celsius? You didn't tell them what temperature was at night, did you?
The maximum temperature. No, I said maximum temperature in a very beautiful summer day on the equator. So that's the maximum temperature on Mars. No.
But at night it falls to minus. You plummet from summer conditions to Arctic conditions overnight, and that's because it's got a very thin atmosphere. But the important thing is, when I say there's no Martians, I was talking about intelligent civilization. There may be Martians there, right? Because although the evidence that we have is that once upon a time Mars was more like the Earth, lots of visual evidence that there was once large bodies of water, lakes, even seas, and running water, rivers. So life may well have revived on Earth, on Mars. But over time, as it's lost its atmosphere into space, the atmospheric pressure's dropped and that water has evaporated away. But the question is, microbes could still exist there. And that's one of the things that we've got to be careful of. We all know about the coronavirus. What about when we have a Martian virus appear?
Well, that's where planetary protection comes in, and this is something that I'm very passionate about because I have a background in biosecurity, and planetary protection is actually biosecurity in space. And there are rules and regulations that say how to protect the planet, our planet, from anything that might come from outside world, but also how to protect other planets. So that's the reason why the Perseverance rover and the Curiosity rover and many rovers that are being sent there, they're first baked or sprayed with hydrogen peroxide to make sure that nothing that we have here on Earth can go there. Though there are opinions, people think that we might have already contaminated Mars with some of our microbes from here with the early spacecraft that landed there. But these are just speculations for now because we haven't measured anything. So that's planetary protection, and it makes sure. That's why the Cassini spacecraft was basically smashed into Saturn instead of letting it drift after the battery was gone, because scientists were afraid that it would smash into Titan and endanger that amazing world that, who knows?
Well, and this knowledge of whether or not there's life out there is all important. Right? Not because they're going to be invading us like they did in War of the Worlds, but what we want to learn is how life has evolved in the universe. Now, I mentioned the stars out there are suns. Right? There's more stars in the known universe, that's suns, than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the world. So how many worlds like the Earth are out there? What we want to learn is what has evolved out there and how it may evolve in the future. But I think we're just about out of time now.
Well, just wanted to say one last thing. We're preparing a Mars exhibition at Stonehenge Aotearoa, and it's going to be about an overview of Mars, but also about the space missions that have been there. So we will have it ready for the Mars opposition in October, and keep an eye on our website.
Yep, and we will be back fairly soon with a little bit of update, and particularly for those people on TV, we'll have those images as well. See you soon.
See you soon.